We want the child to be good, but we don't want the child to be too good. I've given so much money to this organization which seems to work for children, then why are there still so many children begging on the street? Very young, earnest, sincere young people in a great hurry to get somewhere. They get some sort of an experience. I saw this type of light and this type of vision and this type of thing happening, this type of rush of energy going from this part of the body to that, and this chakra awakening up and the kundalini rising up and so on and so forth. And you find that the experience might have some basis, it might have be something genuine. The person is very sincere and earnest, but right now the mental state he is in, he is probably fit for being sent to a psychiatrist. In our series based on the compilation titled The Great Adventure from the Mother's Works, today we shall take up the passage on page 60. This is a passage that deals with the single most important quality that we need in life, including spiritual life, and that is sincerity. This passage starts with a question that has been put to the mother, and the question is, what is the fundamental virtue to be cultivated in order to prepare for the spiritual life? And the mother answers, I have said this many times, but this is an opportunity to repeat it. It is sincerity. A sincerity which must become total and absolute, for sincerity alone is your protection on the spiritual path. If you're not sincere, at the very next step, you're sure to fall and break your head. All kinds of forces, wills, influences, entities are there on the lookout for the least little rift in this sincerity, and they immediately rush in through that rift and begin to throw you into confusion. Therefore, before doing anything, beginning anything, trying anything, be sure first of all that you are not only as sincere as you can be, but have the intention of becoming still more so. For that is your only protection. Now let's go over the passage slowly. So on this page, the mother has emphasized the fact that sincerity is absolutely indispensable. That is the most important virtue or quality to be cultivated. And what it gives us is protection. Why do we need this protection? When we feel that it is because there are many hostile forces which are trying to interfere with our sadhana. Well, they may be there, but then as the mother has said elsewhere, they will not be able to do anything to us unless we provide an opening. But then more than any other hostile forces that may be there outside us, probably the greatest hostility that we face is from within ourselves and from those whom we do not consider to be hostile. Let me try to clarify. Firstly, I mean from within. Within ourselves, yes, there is a lot of hostile forces within us because we are made up of parts. We have that divine essence, the psychic being. But then at the present stage of human evolution, that is the most obscure, the most invisible, and the part that we are likely to neglect. We have other far more insistent, far more noisy parts, the vital and the mental, which occupy much of our attention. And these two, under the direction of our ego, collaborate with each other and provide enough of a distraction for us to deflect us from the spiritual path. So the real Kurukshetra, the real battle, the real difficulty lies within. And if there is one protection that we have from these, it is sincerity. Not only that, if it is from outside, in the normal sense, of course there is nothing outside and inside, that is all relative from the spiritual angle. But then if there is something outside, it is not necessarily in the hostile forces, but it is very often from those who are our well-wishers, near and dear ones, friends. Now, how is it that we need protection even from them? And it is once again the sincerity that can provide us such protection. Because the way the human society is constituted, it comes in our way, it objects to what we are doing, it criticizes us, and sometimes punishes us. If we are better than the average and if we are worse than the average, both cases, there are difficulties. Because the average is what we call the mediocrity. That's why we call it the average. There is a certain average level of human consciousness at which the world operates, and even if one tries to rise significantly above that, the person is isolated, the person is lonely, and he faces difficulties which come from those who are genuinely and sincerely his well-wishers. They try to shower on you, not just that they obstruct, sometimes they shower on you the type of love and affection that you do not need. That itself becomes an obstruction. And the other day I was reading a passage on charity by the mother. And interestingly, apart from many other things, many other very useful things that she has said in that, what she said is that genuine charity is that in which we give something that we are capable of giving to someone who really needs it. Misplaced charity, trying to give something which somebody does not need, is not of any use. And one of the things she mentions there is that giving the type of love and affection that somebody does not need is also really not charitable. So there are difficulties involved from many quarters. There are far too many deflections, distractions, temptations, obligations, responsibilities, so to say, which make it difficult for a person to be on this path unless the person is totally sincere. And if the person is totally sincere, it provides him that armor, that protection, which makes him firm, which gives him the confidence that yes, I am on the right path. And then he can be polite and firm, sometimes politely firm and sometimes firmly polite, but that is something which is really required. I mean, to give the most striking example, suppose let's take a young boy or girl, and we get these types in the ashram of a nun. A young boy or girl going and telling his parents that I do not want to follow the usual path of finding a job, getting married and having children and so on. I want to lead a totally spiritual life. I want to join an ashram. What a tragedy. इसीलिए तुम्हें पढ़ाया लिखाया था, सब कुछ किया था, बड़ा किया था. तो मुश्किल हो गई. We want the child to be good, but we don't want the child to be too good. We want the average. So even when the child comes and says something like that, so his own parents, his own well-wishers will try all types of methods, logic, reasoning. The world is not going to change just because you join the spiritual life. The world will remain as rotten it is. So many people have made sacrifices like that. The world really has not changed. You'll only spoil your own life. You'll suffer. Nobody will change. The world will remain as it is. All types of logic and everything, arguments will be given to him, which is true. The world is not going to change. But then it is not necessarily in the hope of changing the world that the person is doing it. That is one of the things we have to realize on the spiritual path. Yes, the world is not going to change. What we are doing is, firstly, for fulfilling the purpose of our own life, and to that extent, yes, spirituality is a selfish pursuit. And secondly, making that wee bit of difference to the consciousness of the planet, that is the collective aspect. But apart from that, the world is not going to change any time very soon. That is so. Therefore, once again, in that passage on charity, the mother says that charity often gets vitiated when it is warped in results. We start looking for, yes, I have done this thing charitable, now what is happening, what is the result? I have given so much money to this organization which seems to work for children, then why are there still so many children begging on the street? Now, one can look at it in results, yes, that is not going to disappear, that is not the point. So, charity warped in results. So this young boy or girl comes and says, so his parents give him all types of things, and they emotionally blackmail him. We have done so much for you, we have suffered so much for you. खुद खाना नहीं खाते थे, तुम्हें खिलाते थे, एंड सो ऑन. और तुम इतना भी नहीं सुनते हमारी बात. We are not telling you to do anything for us. We don't want anything from you. All what you want to do is do something which will make you a happy and comfortable person. वो भी नहीं सुनते. So all types of arguments will be used. So the greatest obstruction sometimes comes from those who are very near and dear to us, and therefore, what is the protection available to this person? His own sincerity. Once he is sincere, then that firmness will follow. So that is why the mother is giving this argument that firstly, the most fundamental thing that we need is sincerity, and why we need it is because it provides us the most important, much needed protection while we are on the spiritual path, because there is no dearth of deflecting influences, of influences that will try to take us try to draw us once again back into the usual worldly life. Because we also have our own mix-ups. We have a vital, we have a mental. They'll try to pull us in a different direction, and just that addition then further from our surroundings, and it's quite enough to deflect the person. On the next page, Mother continues on the same topic. Do you know what perfect sincerity is? Never to try to deceive oneself, never let any part of the being try to find out a way of convincing the others, never to explain favorably what one does in order to have an excuse for what one wants to do, never to close one's eyes when something is unpleasant, never to let anything pass, telling oneself, that is not important, next time it will be better. So perfect sincerity is something which is pretty deep and not very easy to understand and observe. Aurobindo here gives a rather brief but very comprehensive idea of what sincerity is in one of his letters. He says, sincerity means that you mean what you say, feel what you profess, are earnest in your will. As the sadhak aspires to be an instrument of the divine and one with the divine, sincerity in him means that he is really in earnest in his aspiration and refuses all other will or impulse except the divine's. Which means that it should embrace all parts of the being. It means that you mean what you say. What we say depends upon our thoughts, and our thoughts and our words should coincide. That is when we mean what we say. Feel what you profess, that is the emotional or the vital part of the being. We should feel what we claim to feel. Some people who are very socially active, they sometimes tell you, yesterday I attended a funeral in the morning and a marriage in the evening. Ek jagah rona pada, ek baar hasna pada. Now, this is, which means that the person is saying that yes, you don't feel very sad, you don't feel very happy, but you have to do it because of the appropriate, atmosphere, appropriate occasion to which you have gone. But that is not what sadhana is about. Feel what you profess. If you claim to feel something, you should actually feel it. Feel what you profess. So the sincerity has to embrace the mental, it has to embrace the vital, and are earnest in your will. That is, you actually do what you say and feel. It is, so sincerity has to be there in all the three parts of the being, the physical, vital, and the mental. As the sadhak aspires to be an instrument of the divine and one with the divine, sincerity in him means that he is really in earnest in his aspiration and refuses all other will or impulse except the divine's. Now, where does that impulse from the divine come? Where does the divine tell us what to do? From the psychic being. That ultimately remains our ultimate guide. And as we heard yesterday, in yesterday's talk, yesterday was Siddhi Day, we had a special session in the evening, that after Sri Aurobindo and the mother left the body, probably it has become even more important. Because when the sadhaks had in Pondicherry the mother in front of them in flesh and blood, if they were not sure what their own psychic being was trying to tell them, they could go and ask her. Now that that is not possible, it has become even more important to look within and look for that divine will within ourselves and then refuse all other will except that. So that is sincerity. The mother has elaborated upon it further in this. Never try to deceive yourself. So the first important deception is not deceiving anybody else but deceiving ourselves, which means trying to not match our thoughts with our words, our feelings with what we profess to feel, our will with our aspiration. So never try to deceive oneself. Never let any part of the being try to find out a way of convincing the others. The vital and the mental have a way of interacting with each other and convincing each other. They can put up a joint front and they can put up such a strong and noisy front that the psychic voice can get easily drowned. The vital can be very compelling, the emotions can be very compelling, and then they can rope in the mental, and the mental then finds the arguments which support the vital, which support what we feel like doing, and then we have a very strong opposition built up to the voice of the psychic being, and the psychic being rather, the psychic being is rather shy and non-assertive and does not insist. That voice can be easily drowned, and that's why the mother is saying that do not let any part of the being try to find out a way of convincing the others. I've given several examples, probably in some of you would find it too repetitive, of how the vital and the mental can collaborate. Suppose you go to a party and you find a variety of dishes, you feel like taking them, they are so palatable, and then one remembers the doctor's advice. Don't eat this, don't eat that, this is not good for your health. Now this is the mental part of the being speaking. The vital says, the emotional part of the being says, eat everything, so nice, so tasty. The mental says, no, it's not good for health. Then after this inner dialogue, this inner conflict has gone on for some time, we say, well, the hostess has worked so hard on the meal, she'll feel so bad if I don't do justice to the food. Now I've found a reason to justify what I feel like doing. Or say, a young person, his exams are coming, and he has decided I will not watch the TV. No distractions. Then there's a cricket match, the World Cup final. Now the conflict becomes stronger. I feel like watching the TV, but I resolved I will not watch the TV, I will not waste time on anything. This conflict goes on for some time, then the person says, I've been reading since the morning, I'm so tired, my head is so congested, nothing is getting into my head. If I watch the cricket match for half an hour, I'll feel relaxed, then I'll be able to study much better, my efficiency will go up. So the child has found a reason to watch the TV. So the mental part of the being has started collaborating with the vital. The vital can exploit the mental, and the two can collaborate with each other. So that's what the mother is saying. Never let any part of the being try to find out a way of convincing the others. The psychic cannot be convinced. Psychic has a very firm and universal voice. It is weak. It is a weak voice. In the sense, it's a faint voice. But it cannot be exploited. It does not vary. Either the vital and the mental fall in line and act in light of the psychic, or they may neglect the psychic, and the psychic is quite content to be neglected and ignored. But the psychic itself does not change its verdict. The mental does, the psychic does not. That is why the psychic is far more reliable than the mental, or that part of the being which reasons. We normally place reason on a very high pedestal. But reason is something which can be manipulated. It can justify just about whatever we want. It is only the psychic that cannot be so manipulated. It can be ignored, but it cannot be manipulated. So that's why the mother is saying, never let any part of the being try to find out a way of convincing the others, never to explain favorably what one does in order to have an excuse for what one wants to do. One can do the same thing, but it can be done for so many reasons. Dale Carnegie had said that we do everything for two sets of reasons. That might be a little cynical, but then there is a grain of truth in that. Whatever we do for two sets of reasons. One, those reasons which are the real reasons, and the other, the reasons which seem good. So we can have a variety of reasons, and some can. So that's what the mother is saying here. Never to explain favorably what one does in order to have an excuse for what one wants to do. So we feel like doing it from the emotional part, and then the mental finds reasons which make it look good, which make it look something which can be explained favorably. Never to close one's eyes when something is unpleasant. Never to let anything pass, telling oneself, that is not important, next time it will be better. So one has to be strict with oneself, critical of oneself, and not to too easily say, well, this doesn't matter, okay, for once it doesn't matter, let it pass, next time it will be better. If it is possible this time, let it be this time rather than next. Of course, if it has happened already, then it is different, because in yoga we don't live with a sense of guilt. There will always be another opportunity. But all the same, if it is possible now, then to let it pass this time indicates a lack of will, a lack of sincerity. Then the mother goes on to say here, oh, it's very difficult. Just try for 1 hour and you will see how very difficult it is. Only 1 hour. To be totally, absolutely sincere. To let nothing pass. That is, all one does, all one feels, all in thinks, all one wants is exclusively the divine. This is some consolation for us. Sincerity is important. It's essential. But at the same time, it is extremely difficult, and the mother says, just try being totally sincere just for an hour, and one would discover how difficult it is. Within 1 hour, one will find situations, thoughts, feelings at which it becomes extremely difficult to remain totally sincere. And here again in one of the letters, Sri Aurobindo gives us a consolation. If one keeps the true will and true attitude, then the intuitions or intimations from within will begin to grow, become clear, precise, unmistakable, and the strength to follow them will grow also, and before even you are satisfied with yourself, the divine will be satisfied with you, and begin to withdraw the veil by which he protects himself and his seekers against a premature and perilous grasping of the greatest thing to which humanity can aspire. Here what Sri Aurobindo is saying is bringing in the element of divine grace, in fact. That yes, sincerity can be very difficult, but then divine grace is always there to help us with this difficulty. What is grace? Grace is something which is unmerited, which goes beyond our efforts, which is something which we do not deserve, but the divine showers it on us because of its infinite love for us. If one keeps the true will and true attitude, then the intuitions or intimations from within will begin to grow. Which means that if one is sincere, the will and the attitude, the thoughts, feelings and actions are true and sincere, then the intuitions and intimations from within will begin to grow. That is, the direction, the thoughts and feelings which come from the psychic level. Psychic level can also influence the vital and the mental. The vital and the mental can work in light of the psychic. So those intuitions and intimations from within will begin to grow, which means the psychic will start getting more and more influential. Become clear, precise, unmistakable, and the strength to follow them will also grow. We'll also acquire the courage and the strength required to follow the voice of the psychic. And then comes the really very important and consoling part. And then, before even you are satisfied with yourself, the divine will be satisfied with you. Which means that we may still feel that there's a long way to go. I'm still so inadequate, still falling short of even my own standards. I fail so often. I know I'm being insincere. I'm not being totally sincere. I'm not doing exactly what I should be doing. When that happens, one may be not satisfied with oneself, but far before one is satisfied with oneself, the divine will be satisfied with you. Which means that God's love is infinite. After we have put in some sincere effort, even if it is not perfect, even if we are wanting in many ways, the divine will be satisfied and will start showering its grace. And what will that grace be like? What form will it take? The divine will be satisfied with you and begin to withdraw the veil by which he protects himself and his seekers. Now this is again very perceptive and deep. What the divine will do is to start withdrawing the veil, that partition, that curtain by which he protects himself. Protects himself means keeps himself hidden. But then the next part is important, protects himself and his seekers. Which means that that veil is not only because God wants to hide himself, the divine wants to hide itself, that veil is also protecting us. Protecting us from what? And he protects himself and his seekers against a premature and perilous grasping of the greatest thing to which humanity can aspire. So which means that a premature experience of the divine, if that veil is rent too early, is dangerous even for the seeker. Now that evidence again we find in places like the ashram. Very young, earnest, sincere young people in a great hurry to get somewhere. They get some sort of an experience. I saw this type of light and this type of vision and this type of thing happening, this type of rush of energy going from this part of the body to that, and this chakra wakening up and the kundalini rising up and so on and so forth. And you find that the experience might have some basis, it might have be something genuine. The person is very sincere and earnest, but right now the mental state he is in, he is probably fit for being sent to a psychiatrist. So it is for our own protection it happens. So the divine will be satisfied with you and begin to withdraw the veil, which means again begin to withdraw. It will not be a sudden event, the type of event which these earnest young people sometimes come and describe. It will begin to withdraw the veil by which he protects himself and his seekers. So he is not protecting himself, he doesn't need any protection. Here protection just means that he is trying to hiding himself. The veil by which he protects himself and his seekers against a premature and perilous, dangerous grasping of the greatest thing to which humanity can aspire. The greatest thing to which the humanity can aspire is the divine, and the divine itself keeps itself hidden, plays hide and seek with us, as Aurobindo has said in Savitri, plays hide and seek. The divine hides and we seek. So it's a hide and seek game, and in that game he hides and hides till it is safe for us for it to remain hidden. So it is for our own safety that it remains hidden, and as our effort grows, it gets satisfied with us even before we are satisfied with ourselves and starts withdrawing that veil. So we find that the total sincerity is not easy. Total sincerity is desirable, but it is not easy. And like everything in yoga, it is a process, not an event. It is difficult, but then here we have some consolation from the Master that we have to keep up And then before we are fully satisfied with us, the divine is satisfied with us and showers its grace. And that is what then takes us really further. In fact, that is what really takes us further, because our efforts are never really adequate. What we get is far out of proportion to our efforts. There's again another little story about that. There was once a person who in his dreams saw that he was gobbled up by a ghost. Giant ghost, with a big mouth, a mouth big enough to swallow this person in. And now this person has landed in the ghost's stomach. And then this person feels that I should somehow come out. So he starts climbing up the food pipe, and before he reaches the mouth, slips down. Again starts climbing up, slips down. Again starts climbing up, slips down. Something like Robert Bruce's spider. And the night passes like that, trying to climb up, falling down in the stomach. And then this person wakes up and suddenly realizes, oh, it was just a dream. There's no ghost, I'm free. So all the effort that he kept making throughout the night, trying to climb up, that was personal effort, and the realization that he had, I'm free, the awakening, that is divine grace. Now in this Elements on Yoga, there is a series of questions and answers on sincerity, in the topic that we have today. These questions were put to Sri Aurobindo during the period 1933 to 1936 by the sadhaks. And let's see the answers that he has given. One of the questions was, the mother has said, if you are not sincere, do not begin yoga. Does this imply that if after entering yoga a person finds that his sincerity is not complete, he should leave it? The answer is no. It is only if he is fundamentally insincere that he should leave it. Then the next question is, how can a sadhak know whether he is fundamentally insincere? If he sees that he is full of ego and doing the sadhana for the sake of the ego only and has no real turning towards the divine. So that is the test of fundamental insincerity. That is being full of the ego and doing the sadhana for the sake of the ego. That is, the person feels that, well, I am doing this, this and this, so I am one notch above the rest of humanity. No, that is egoistic sadhana. So if he is doing it for the ego only and has no real turning towards the divine, instead of thinking that I am doing this because I want the divine, if he thinks that I am doing it so because it makes me one notch above the rest of humanity, then he is fundamentally insincere, and then he should leave the yoga. Is there no possibility for a sadhak to get rid of his fundamental insincerity? See how sometimes difficult the seekers can be. They are not giving up. So he says, is there no possibility for a sadhak to get rid of this fundamental insincerity? Then the answer the master gives is, if the sadhak becomes aware of his insincerity and sincerely wants to get rid of it, he can. So it's not impossible. Once again, he has to sincerely want to get rid of the insincerity. So the sincerity is important. Then the next question is, how can a sadhak know whether he is growing in sincerity? The answer is, by seeing whether he responds to the divine forces only or still responds to, accepts and harbors the ego forces and desire forces. The next question is it true that if a sadhak has complete sincerity, he can make rapid progress even if his devotion is deficient? The answer is, if he is sincere, there is bound to be devotion. Sincerity in yoga means to respond to the divine alone, and if he has no devotion, he cannot do it. The two go together. Total sincerity will go with total devotion. What is the right attitude to stick on to the path till the supramental truth is realized? So, what is the right attitude till the supramental truth is realized on earth? This was 1936. Of course, the supramental descended in 1956. But then that does not mean that the humanity as a whole has realized it. The descent only meant that the possibility has been opened up. Now something which was fundamentally almost impossible except maybe for a few rishis, now it has become more generally possible than it was before. But that doesn't. That's only a potential. That's a possibility. But then here, since this is even before that descent, the question is, what is the right attitude to stick on to this path till the supramental truth is realized? The answer is, there is the psychic condition and sincerity and the devotion to the mother. So once again, sincerity is important for the progress, and apart from this, two other things Aurobindo has mentioned: devotion, and he has already said in the previous question that total sincerity would automatically imply total devotion. The two go together. And then the psychic condition, which the mother has clarified in the discussions on this, means bringing the psychic being forwards. So the person will be able to keep the psychic being forwards and act on that voice only if the sincerity is total. So in that sense, for fulfilling these two other conditions, the psychic being kept forwards and the devotion, once again, sincerity is the most important. Out of these three, once again, sincerity emerges as the key requirement for the progress. Finally, I'll read the last paragraph from The Great Adventure on page 61, which is a sentence that in fact is an excellent sentence for meditating upon. So it's a sentence which one can meditate upon. I want nothing but the divine. I think of nothing but the divine. I do nothing but what will lead me to the divine. I love nothing but the divine. I think that's all for any explanation, but I can read it out once more. This sentence which we can meditate upon. I want nothing but the divine. I think of nothing but the divine. I do nothing but what will lead me to the divine. I love nothing but the divine.